Hey everybody, welcome back. Hope everybody had a good weekend. A lot of exciting football games today. My Bears won because they should have won. They beat one of the worst teams in the league, so they're back to 500. Woohoo! They have quarterback Justin Fields, which we had a pretty good game today and a terrible one last week, so I'd say he redeemed himself. But putting that aside, nothing to do with the video really, but want to talk about what it's like to lose, what it's like to deal with the death of a friend or a loved one. And I will say I haven't had a whole lot of that yet. I've had a little bit, but it's mainly my grandparent. Well, my dad's parents died when I was real young. I don't even remember my grandfather, my dad's father. He died when I was not even 3 years old yet. And I do remember my grandmother. She died a few years later when I was 5. And I didn't really understand what was going on. I just knew that she was sick. She had cancer, and ovarian cancer. She was real sick for the last 2 years of her life, and she lost most of her hair, and I knew something was wrong. And I just didn't, I do remember feeling bad, but I didn't really understand the whole concept of death, afterlife, soul, things like that. My mom explained it to me, and I knew she was sick, and then once she was gone, I remember her, the graveside burial. I pretty much just thought that she was going into like a permanent sleep, but I didn't really understand. I knew she wasn't going to be around anymore, and I understood that after a while, but again, that's too much for a 5-year-old to really understand. And eventually, I got it a few years later once we started going to church and learning about the afterlife and the soul and heaven, all that sort of thing. I'm not going to get into a religious conversation here, but my mom's parents died when I was much older. My mom's mother died when I was 29, and then my grandfather died about 2 years later when I was 31, just turned 31. And getting into the point of this video of what it's like to deal with the loss of a loved one. Those are the first two people in my life that passed away that were really close to me. That was really, it hit hard. And especially my grandmother, because my dad's mother died of ovarian cancer, and then my mom's mother died of liver cancer. So I lost both my grandmothers to cancer, and then it wasn't as long. It was about 6 months that she suffered before she died. But yeah, it was really hard, and really hard. A lot of tears, a lot of grief, a lot of hard days, hard times. I was actually relieved when she passed away because I knew that she wasn't in the. One good thing about having somebody pass away of cancer, it's a terrible thing, but at least you get to prepare for it. You get to say your last, goodbyes, and that was actually the one time I never really told my grandmother that I loved her until she died. It was really hard for me to say, but I knew she wasn't going to be around too much longer, and it came to that point where it's like, oh, Jeff, it's time to tell her. She could be gone any day now. And yeah, it really was hard watching her die. So like I said, I was actually really relieved when she was gone. It was a relief, and but it doesn't seem real at first. It takes a while to sink in. And you have so much support of coworkers and family members. Well, hopefully you do. At least I did. I had the support of coworkers, family members, and friends. And it's actually easiest in the beginning. When you have whatever you do, whether you have like a memorial, just a memorial, or my family, we always have a wake and the funeral the next day, and graveside burial if the weather permits, if the weather's nice enough. That's and then we go out for a luncheon afterwards. That's my family tradition. And during those events, during the wake or the memorial or funeral, whatever you end up doing, I notice I get a lot of support from family members and friends, coworkers, things like that. And it still hasn't quite sunk in, but what makes it harder is when you actually have to go back to work and you have to go back to your normal. You don't have that support anymore. I mean, I'm sure you could get it if you called up a friend or a family member or coworker or somebody like that. But yeah, when you go back to your normal when you have to go back to work full time and everybody else has to go back to work, it's really tough. And that's when it really kind of sinks in, like, oh, this is really it. This person's really gone. And really the hardest part is the funeral. A lot of tears from everybody. On the wake, you kind of get you get support at both of them. But the funeral is really hard because that's the last moment and everybody's crying, and it's when you see the deceased person for the last time. You walk past the coffin or the casket and you take like one last look, one last prayer. It's like one last goodbye. And then when I was actually a pallbearer for my grandmother when she passed away, and just carrying her casket into the hearse. It was like, wow, this is. And when they closed the back hatch, it's like, wow, this is really it. And my grandfather's death was not as hard because he didn't die of he didn't die of cancer. He just died of natural causes when he was he basically about a few months before he died, he fell and broke his hip, and that's kind of like when he was 95 years old, and so I had expected him. It was more expected. He lived a lot longer than I thought he would. I always thought that because he was older than my grandmother, and I always thought that he would outlive or she would outlive him, which obviously didn't happen. But when my grandfather passed away, it was more, even though I knew a few weeks before he passed, I was able to kind of prepare for him too, even though he didn't die of cancer. When he broke his hip and he went into a nursing home, and he pretty much his health just went downhill. And it was really hard because he died. My wife was pregnant with my daughter at the time, and I felt bad that my grandmother never got to meet my daughter, and I thought at least my grandpa would get to meet her. But I know my mom said, yeah, unfortunately he's not going to get to meet your daughter. He's going to be passed away before then. He did pass away a few months before my daughter was born, so that was kind of hard. And his was easier because he wasn't really. I mean, I guess he probably suffered not as much as my grandmother did, but his was more expected because he was older and his health had kind of gone downhill the last 10, 15 years. So I expected him to be gone a lot sooner, but it's not easy. Death is not an easy thing to deal with. Sometimes even if you aren't very close to the person, even if it's just somebody maybe you worked with or somebody that you knew from high school, it is kind of shocking. It's definitely shocking, especially when it's somebody young, that when it's unexpected, that can be shocking, and just knowing that they're never going to be, seen on Earth again. But as far as my grandparents go, I still think about them every day. And I had a friend that died about almost 2 years ago, and I still think about him every day. But I'm past the grief process. I've gotten over it, and everybody grieves differently. It took me quite a bit of time. It took me probably about 3 years to get over my grandma. And I'm trying to remember my grandpa, but yeah, my grandma, that really hit hard. I was closer to her than I was to my grandpa, but I was close to both of them. It hurt when both of them were gone. And you get like I said, you'll get a lot of support in the beginning, but what makes it hard is when it's all over with and you actually have to go back to work and go back to your normal everyday life, and you're still kind of grieving, and you may not have as much support as you did before because everybody else is, guess what, busy too. So, but yeah, I think that's all I have to say about that. I hope that helps for those of you that maybe you've recently lost a loved one, or you're on the verge of, or just prepare for it someday. So that's all I have to say about that. Hope you all had a great weekend. I hope you all do well with these encounters that may come up in your life eventually. Comment, like, share, subscribe, and I'll see you all real soon. Take care, everybody. Bye.